Previously on the Archangel Michael Chronicles.
Every song is different. Sometimes it happens quickly, sometimes it happens slowly. No one can quite say what the creative process is because I have nothing to do with it almost because it's created in space. It's God's work, not mine.
Michael sprains his ankle badly. The next night, March 9th, Michael performs and accepts awards in a wheelchair at the Soul Train Music Awards in Los Angeles. Sometime shortly after, Michael, now on crutches, visits the Sega Technical Institute in Palo Alto to congratulate the team on the success of Sonic 1 and 2. An anonymous developer asks Michael if he'd like to write music for Sonic 3. That spring, Sega Technical Institute brings on keyboardist Brad Buxer, engineer Bobby Brooks, sound designer Darryl Ross, orchestrator Jeff Grace, bassist Doug Grigsby, and producer C. Sirocco Jones. Of these six, the first five would all be involved in Michael's next album, History, Past, Present, and Future Book 1, which includes the song Stranger in Moscow.
Because this is my dream, and I wanted to make sure I could get me and my kids out the hood. It's always been my passion to rap. A while ago, I had signed a contract, and I didn't know nothing about the business or this game out here. And just right now, I'm realizing that I signed my soul. I sold my soul to the devil. I signed myself to the devil. I don't even own myself no more.
He reached out his hand to shake my hand, and I shook his hand. And then when I tried to let go of his hand, he kept holding on to my hand. And then he slid his hand all the way down mine. And from that moment on, I knew that there was more to Michael than met the eye. I knew he liked the ladies.
Wow.
Was Michael Jackson gay?
Absolutely not.
To your knowledge, Mr. Jackson, were you ever accused of having sexually molested Brett Barnes?
Won't answer that.
Do you know a person by the name of Macaulay Culkin?
What?
To your knowledge, were you ever accused of having sexually molested Macaulay?
That's an instruction not to answer.
And by then, nobody would define Michael Jackson as that warrior god-like figure who had the heart of Peter Pan. Instead, he would be known as Wacko Jacko, the dead man walking.
Your secrets, if you really look at yourself, you would be speechless. What happened to being doctors and teachers? What happened to being your brother's keeper? Nowadays, kids more worried.
Yo, what's up, y'all? It's your boy, Mr.BandClap, and we in the building with another installment of the Archangel Michael Chronicles. We ended 2019 with a bang, and you know what? We about to do the same thing with 2020. We about to do a rinse and repeat, but this time we about to come harder, stronger, and better. Yeah, I mean, because that's how we do it. I'm out here in front of Jimmy Hula's, my favorite spot to eat and also to do these videos. So with this installment, we're gonna be chronicling Michael Jackson's life from History album to Blood on the Dance Floor. Happy New Year, y'all. We got a lot to talk about. So let's get the show on the road. And remember, you're watching
BandClap
TV. Let's get it.
Story your way. Cause the confusion. You're changing the rules while you're playing the game. I can see you much longer. I think I might go insane. Tired of injustice. Tired of the scheme. Tired of disgusting. So what does it mean, daddy? We're kicking me down. I got to get up. Check that the sound. I hope that I'm certain, daddy. Big in the shadow. I'm clean as the light. If you tell me I'm wrong, then you better prove you're right. You're selling out souls, but I care about mine. I've got to get stronger, and I won't give up the fight. With such confusion.
For decades, the NAACP had stood at the forefront of the struggle for equal justice under the law for all people in our land. They have fought in the lunchrooms of the South, in the hallowed halls of the Supreme Court, and in the boardrooms of corporate America for justice, equality, and the very dignity of all mankind. Members of the NAACP have been jailed and even killed in the noble pursuit of those ideals upon which our country was founded. None of these goals is more meaningful for me at this time in my life than the notion that everyone is presumed to be innocent and totally innocent until they are charged with a crime and then convicted by a jury of their peers.
All right, y'all, so we back. Welcome to another BandClap TV podcast. Yeah, I know it's been a while since I said that. I just want to take some time out before I do this and just really say thanks, and that I appreciate everybody who's been rocking with me doing these podcasts and just on my channel in general. We had a really monumental 2019, and I just want to keep that steam and just keep all of that going full steam ahead into 2020. And what better way to start off this wonderful decade than to hit y'all with another installment of the Archangel Michael Jackson Chronicles. Man, when I tell y'all, I've been wrestling with this for I don't know how long. Mike has been like, yo, you gotta finish this. You gotta finish it. Don't leave him hanging like that. So I'm like, you know what? Let me go ahead and give y'all this fourth installment of this. So when we last left off on this Archangel Michael Chronicles, we stopped at 1996, and I was talking about how Michael Jackson will go on to being from the Archangel Michael to Wacko Jacko, the dead man walking. But see, there was a lot of things that went on in between that 1995 to 1997 time frame that I gotta talk about, because there's a lot to talk about. So for a minute, let's go ahead and rewind, because remember on part 2 of this podcast, I think it was around 18 minutes of the Michael Jackson Chronicles part 2, when I was talking about the different rules that you learn in order to quote unquote play this game and to be in the industry. And one of those rules were that you only speak when you're spoken to and stuff like that. But another one that I want to highlight right now is that when I was talking about how pretty much everything is appointed to you in this industry, and that goes to who you marry for the most part, who you have sex with that's being publicly put out there in the media. And we all know that when it comes to Hollywood, a lot of these celebrities are passed around, especially the female celebrities, and it's just like a tight-knit type of circle where everybody knows everybody sleeps with everybody, and so on and so forth. And in Michael Jackson's case, it was by design that, as you see in part 3, Michael Jackson had a lot of black and melanated girlfriends that he had sex with. And not only that, anybody who really knows about Michael Jackson's life knows that Michael Jackson had children way prior to the 3 that's being put out in the media. And I remember before Joe Jackson passed away, he let the cat out of the bag when it came to one of Michael Jackson's estranged sons, Omer Batty. Now, since Michael Jackson at this point was deep in the game and playing the game on a real deep level, you'll never see Michael Jackson's real children in the spotlight, partly because that's what Michael wanted. He loved his children so much, and he tried to shield them when he was alive from the spotlight as much as he could. Now, I'm going to talk about his children in a lot more depth as we go along. But for right now, let's talk about Michael Jackson's first wife that was appointed to him, which was Lisa Marie Presley. So for a minute, let's look into her astrology. So Lisa Marie Presley, she was born on February the 1st, 1968 at 5:01 p.m. 5 plus 1 is 6, so you got your 6. And also, she's a Pisces moon, which also raises an eyebrow. So this means that their union, even though it was a short union, it was a very well thought out union, because the way you can think about this is kind of like in Middle Eastern families and stuff like that, when they have arranged marriages, and the way they arrange the marriage, they make sure certain things astrologically, numerology, spiritually, and even family wise match up to the point where even though it's an arranged marriage, the two people actually do have some sort of connection because of those things lining up like that. So this was the same way with Michael Jackson and Lisa Presley. So looking at their moon signs, you could say that Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley were soulmates. But just because somebody is a soul family to you doesn't necessarily mean that if y'all do a marriage or a relationship or something like that, that it's just gonna work. So for a minute, let me explain to y'all what's the difference between a soulmate and a twin flame, because I know that that's something that y'all may be wondering, and I know a lot of people have been wondering this as well. Now, the way I explain it is just in a small nutshell, because I may do a whole video about this depending on, the severity of the request. But just in a nutshell, everybody knows that we all come from this source, and the source is a braid of masculine and feminine together as one. So small little pieces of that source break away from each other, and those little pieces of that source are called individual souls. So when these individual souls travel through galaxies and stuff like that, look at that as you being a baby and you're going through preschool and elementary school and high school. So you're traveling through these planets, and as you're traveling through these planets, you're learning different accolades and you're learning different things to take with you when you go from planet to planet, from galaxy to galaxy. And once you finally make it to Earth, which is another school, depending on how proficient you were in those other schools of thought, is going to determine how strong of a zodiac sign that you are. So kind of look at the 8 planets as different types of school, like middle school, elementary school, and preschool. And your moon sign represents the last place that you went to before you came to Earth through the sun. And look at everybody with your same moon sign. Look at that as everybody who went to high school with you. And this explains why, even though you may have 2 Geminis or 2 Virgos or 2 Pisces or 2 Cancers in the same room, they may have some similarities, but they're not going to be 100% alike, because it's just like in school. You know, you had some kids in school who was the teacher's pet. You had some kids in school who just did just enough to get by. And then you had some kids in school who were the bullies or the class clowns or the kids who sat in the back because they didn't want to be bothered. So depending on how good you did in that school of thought, aka the universe, the university, I hope y'all got that correlation now, that's how you're going to show yourself, aka your sun sign, and how you're going to act. So with all of that being said, you going around this earth meeting different people and stuff like that, and then you meet somebody and y'all just hit it off because y'all got the same moon sign, meaning that spiritually y'all remember each other because y'all went to the same high school together, or better yet, y'all are from the same hometown. But just because you're revisiting or you're re-meeting somebody from your past or your past life or whatever doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a high school sweetheart, you marry them and you're just living happily ever after. Even though something like that could happen, but there's a lot of cases where it don't happen. But the two may end up being really, really good friends, or it could lead to a very, very devastating breakup, because on the inside, your inner child is going to feel like he or she lost a brother or a sister, which hurts way worse than you just feeling like you lost your girlfriend, or you feeling like you lost your wife or your husband or something like that. I would almost swear that majority of the really, really bad, devastating breakups that you see are two people who were soulmates and it didn't work out. Now, with the twin flame dynamic, I'm gonna talk about that when I start talking about blood on the dance floor. So y'all sit tight. So where was I? Oh yeah, that's right. Lisa Marie Presley. As you can see with her natal chart, she was divinely and also strategically placed in Michael Jackson's life starting in 1992, where they would first be formally introduced to each other by an Australian artist known as Brett Livingston Strong and his son. Now, remember when I said that just because the moon signs may be alike, don't mean that the relationship is just a match made in heaven. So to support that, let's look at Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley sun sign. Now we all know that Michael Jackson is a Virgo, but Lisa Marie Presley, she's an Aquarius. So you got the Virgo and Aquarius going on. Let's look at how a marriage would end up just on that front. And it reads, the Virgo man and Aquarius woman, likely many a mismatched pair. In most cases, the relationship between the Virgo man and the Aquarius woman will not last long enough for them to marry. ... Not if Hollywood got anything to do with it. It also said that in this particular combination, the trouble will not be that they do not get along. Instead, it will be that they do not connect at all, even though they're very interesting to each other on an intellectual level. But ultimately, they just don't speak the same language. Even if they got the same hobbies or intellectual pursuits, they approach them in very different ways. The Aquarius woman is interested in theory, whereas the Virgo man is interested in practical application. So with that being said, there's no theory that this couple was placed together by the industry. Need more proof? let's look at the Venus sign of these two. Now, remembering that Michael Jackson's Venus sign was in Leo, it really makes sense when Michael Jackson fell in love with Lisa Presley. He would do a lot of public displays of affection, like when they French kissed live at the Video Music Awards back in August 9th, 1994, which coincidentally has some significance too because it was the 11th annual MTV Video Music Award show that it happened on. And when you take the date plus the number 11 and add it all together, you get the number 6. Man, I swear, these sixes are crazy. But also, it explains why, since Michael Jackson loved helping the children, especially the ones that were sick and shut in and misfortuned, they would go out together to different hospitals and different places, and you could see Lisa Marie Presley right beside Michael Jackson as he's doing his usual thing, which was helping the children that are in need.
This is Lisa Marie and myself at a hospital in Budapest, and I saw this little kid. His name was Farkas. He was very sick. He was green in the face, but he had this glow and this sparkle in his eye. I asked this nurse, what's wrong with this kid? She said that he needs a liver. So I said, does that mean he's gonna die? She said, yes, he's gonna die unless he gets the liver. I said, I'm not gonna let him die, this sweet, sweet angel. No matter what it takes, I'm going to find a liver for him. So I sent my organization around the world. We went all over the place, and it took a long time. And I said, I'm not giving up. I'm not going to have this child die. I was so happy when I got a phone call. They told me we found the liver, and he has his life. And I'm so proud that I could help him. God bless him. I love you, Farkas.
Bela Farkas now lives a healthy life with his wife and 2 children.
But see, little did Michael Jackson know that Lisa Marie Presley, Venus, was actually in Capricorn. Now, even though both of them have very sensitive signs with the Pisces moon, this Venus sign is really pivotal when bringing my point home about their relationship. So let's read a little bit about that Venus in Capricorn. Now, it says that Venus and Capricorn are very serious people, practical in matters of the heart with a steady approach to love, emotions, and romance. They might as well treat their relationships in a business-like manner, meaning that even though in the media and on camera, Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley look like a match made in heaven, even when you look down to their moon signs. But as you can see, their sun sign and their Venus sign is a lot more incompatible than compatible. Now, why would Lisa Marie Presley have a more business-like outlook when it came to dealing with Michael Jackson? Would it be because Lisa Marie Presley herself was trying to break out as her own celebrity as a singer and a songwriter and a pop star, and she needed to use Michael Jackson, who was the hottest thing going at the time, with his presence, with his celebrity and all of those things, even with her being present in the humanitarian work that Michael Jackson was doing? Were these all things to put under her superstar celebrity resume only to propel herself as an entity? Well, these were all the questions that people was really trying to figure out back in that time. Now, you all may not know, but even though the media portrayed Michael Jackson and Lisa Presley to be confirmed married around July 11th, 1994, they actually secretly married on May the 26th, 94, which coincidentally, when you add all the numbers up, it equals the number 36. 3 plus 6 is 9. So again, this goes to show you that this whole marriage was literally all about Lisa. And just like all parasitic entities, Michael, being the innocent, good-hearted, loving man that he was the perfect host, but he himself really didn't get too much out of the deal. So hearing about that, it made sense why everything had to be so secret. Sources say that the ceremony took 12 minutes. 1 plus 2 is 3. The only 2 people that attended this secret wedding in the Dominican Republic was Lisa Marie's friend Eva Darling and her husband Thomas. I don't know how to say his last name, so I'm gonna just say Thomas K. Which coincidentally, again, this Thomas guy is the brother-in-law, aka is the brother of Lisa Marie's first husband, which was named Danny K, because I don't know how to say that name. Now, pretty much Lisa Marie Presley came into the marriage with 2 kids that she had by her ex-husband Danny. And even though Michael Jackson treated those children as if they were his own, and since this was finally a relationship that he really thought that this would happen in, since this was the only relationship that Michael Jackson truly had that was permitted by the industry, he thought that surely he would be able to use this opportunity to have some children. I mean, that was one of the things that they agreed upon, right? But see, one thing that poor little Mike forgot about is that just like how the marriage and the relationship itself was controlled, every aspect of the relationship is also controlled. And since Lisa Marie Presley, with her Venus and Capricorn, treated the relationship as a business transaction anyway, with the goals that she had in mind, and probably with the specific instructions that she was given, no matter how much Michael Jackson would beg her and beg her, she just would not have his baby. And this deeply, deeply saddened Michael Jackson, to the point where in the latter part of their relationship, they didn't even live together. They would just make public appearances and things like that, but there was really no intimacy going on with those two, to the point where media and the press started to rule out their relationship as nothing but a publicity stunt. So needless to say, in Michael Jackson's frantic search to have a child, and his nurse at the time, Debbie Rowe, being willing to have Michael Jackson's child, in 1996, Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley would officially divorce. And in the same year, November 15, 1996, Michael Jackson goes on to marry Debbie Rowe in a private ceremony at his presidential suite in Sydney, Australia. Now, I already know what I think is gonna be, but for the benefit of the doubt, I'm gonna say that this relationship right here was organic for the most part. Now, if I add these numbers up and it don't equal 6, that means that my assumptions is correct. But if it does, then y'all already know that this had something to do with his life path, and this was also something that was orchestrated by the industry as well. So let's do it. 1 + 1 + 1 + 5 + 1 + 9 + 9 + 6. Well, I guess I was right. It equals 33. And we all know how important when it comes to the music industry and just the Masonic order in general. We all know how important that 33 is. But when you add the two together, you get the number 6. So I don't even gotta go no further than that. So if y'all know anything about the Jackson children, who was put out in the forefront in the media, which was the 3 children that he had around that time, which was Paris Jackson and Michael Joseph Jackson Jr., and also Prince Michael II. Now, Prince Michael was actually born from a surrogate mother, and there's little to no information when it comes to that. And due to a article from the Los Angeles Times, it states that although there is a very wide speculation that Michael Jackson was not the biological father of Rose's children, he was the legal father under California law. So I put that out there just so y'all could get a small bit of receipts, because when it comes to this situation, when it comes to Michael's kids, I had to stay on here for the time that I did, simply because Michael Jackson wanted me to express 2 things when it came to this. The first thing is just how evil and manipulative not only this system of soulless beings is to somebody who's innocent, but just the music industry in general when you become a mega star like Michael Jackson. I mean, let's think about it for a minute. Do you truly think you got somebody as iconic as Michael Jackson and you got his sperm? Man, do y'all know that for the longest they held Michael Jackson's brain and other body parts from being buried, and his family had to fight to get all of his parts to be buried? So do y'all really think, I mean, let's be honest, do y'all truly think that they would give up Michael Jackson's sperm, that one thing that carries that Jackson gene? Do you really think that they're just gonna give that up just because Michael Jackson wants to have a surrogate mother? I mean, I'll let y'all be the judge of that. But let's just say that just because an apple through the seasons changes its color from red to brown, that doesn't mean when that apple seed grows into another apple tree that the fruit that's coming from that apple tree is gonna start off brown. No, it's gonna start off red just like the other apples. And I mean, let's be completely honest here. Would there have been any doubt in anybody's mind that those kids were or were not Michael Jackson's biological kids if Michael Jackson looked like he did in Thriller? Or better yet, if Michael Jackson looked the exact way that he looked on Off the Wall, and he went and got with Debbie Rowe and had those kids and they turned out the way that they did? Do you really think that there would be all of this speculation and controversy as to whether those kids are biologically his or not, and should they inherit the Michael Michael Jackson and the Jacksons' fortune, man, I'm just trying to get y'all to open y'all eyes up to the big picture. Because like I told y'all, all of this stuff that was going on with Mike, from the way he was raised up to the people that was appointed to him for him to marry and have relationships and have these children, quote unquote, with, and all of this stuff, it was all planned out. And Michael Jackson himself, he was just a player on the chessboard, with his energy being sucked from him left and right, like all of us innocent people out there who want to be something in this Hollywood music industry, but don't know the ins and outs of how evil and satanic that it can be. And it got to a point where musically, the more creative control that Michael Jackson would get over his music, the more he started to voice and the more he started to express these frustrations that he couldn't really necessarily say it out loud at the moment, due to the way he already knows that the media is going to twist his words around and all of that type of stuff. Now, from this time, from 94 to 2001, we can clearly see that Michael Jackson, facial wise, is starting to drastically change from the way that he looked during the bad era in the 80s. And one might be thinking to himself or herself, like, why would Michael Jackson want to make himself look so monstrous? I mean, was he that insecure in himself that he just wanted to purposely disfigure himself? Was he self-conscious about his skin color, that he wanted to make himself look from a handsome melanated black man to a monstrous looking old white woman? Well, for the next part of my podcast, let's talk a little bit about Michael Jackson's plastic surgeries, aka the crooks behind his new look.
I think that his appearance is still a source of a great deal of discussion, and it's always going to be. We're fashion looks in because no one's ever looked like this before.
From the days when I first started shooting Michael, I've just seen a very bizarre path that he's taken, from being extraordinarily successful and talented to this obsession, which has turned himself into a caricature of anything human.
It's the freak show in the circus, the bearded lady. It's been going on for centuries, that sort of view of the strange creature. Let's go and have a look. And I wonder where he goes from here. I wonder what he's going to be doing in 10 years' time. It looks fairly bleak, really. With somebody on his trajectory, there is always the fear that in the end, there's nowhere to go, apart from complete self-destruction.
You physically changed, haven't you? The photographs of you, if I look at them.
No, it's called adolescence. It's called growing and changing.
Yeah, but even the shape of your face has changed.
No, it's not. I've had no plastic surgery on my face, just my nose. It helped me breathe better so I can hit higher notes and have clearer. The press decided to add on all this stuff. Nothing's been done to my eyes, cheekbones, chins, lips, nothing. They made it all up.
Do you think that people do go too far with plastic surgery, generally? Do you think
Well,
it's become... So why are you so defensive when people say Mick Jagger's had one, Paul McCartney may have had one, Michael Jackson's had one?
They don't do it that way.
What do they do?
They just pick on me like I'm the only one that does it. That's why.
So if people said, well, actually, Michael's the same as everyone else,
Yeah.
then it wouldn't upset you so much.
It would upset me so much.
You know, if you want to have a facelift, you have a facelift.
Yeah. If it makes you happy.
So, as y'all can see, even though from the outside, Michael Jackson's moves still look the same, he was still a very good showman on the stage. But when it came to his look, especially after the bad era, we really started to see a full decline, especially in the facial department. Now, I remember back on part 3 when I was talking about how Michael Jackson had to keep getting surgery on his nose due to a fated accident that happened while he was performing Smooth Criminal, and he broke his nose. And also I talked about how early on in his career, in that faded Pepsi commercial, he had to get a lot of surgeries for that. And then also, this was one of the gateway situations that got Michael Jackson into using a lot of different types of pain medications so he can deal with the pain while he's performing on stage and stuff like that, because Michael Jackson, he didn't like taking time out of performing and stuff like that to fully heal up. So instead, he would take a lot of different pain medications to kind of bandage the pain so he can get through his performances. And going more and more into Michael Jackson's life when he got older, a lot of that stuff started to catch up with him, and in turn, it started to take a toll on him. Even though, unless you just really know about Michael Jackson's personal life, you wouldn't even think that he had half of the things that was wrong with him during his lifetime. And on the next installment of the Archangel Michael Chronicles, that's where I'm going to really get in depth talking about his sicknesses and stuff like that. Because, I mean, a lot of people just didn't know how sickly Michael Jackson really was. Even though on stage, he would give it his all. Now, the messed up part about this whole situation is with a lot of not only the sicknesses that Michael Jackson had that really took a toll on his physical body the older he got. Not only that, since his skin already was sensitive, and then with there being a lack of melanin due to the vitiligo that he got, and this is just my conjecture, but I truly feel like certain things, certain chemicals and stuff like that was being extracted from Michael Jackson while he was under the anesthesia. And I got a strong feeling, because you know the energy of Archangel Michael been with me since I started with this, but I got a strong feeling that those evil surgeons would purposely botch Michael Jackson's surgeries on his nose so that things would malfunction, and then he would have to come back and get under the knife again, and then that would malfunction. And in order to fix that, now we got to go under the knife and do something else in order to fix this, and then after that we need to go back under the knife and tuck this or fix this just so we can do this. And for somebody who already doesn't have really good skin, the more you do this, the weaker and weaker your skin is gonna end up being, to the point where Michael Jackson's skin, especially on his face and his arms and legs, got so bad to the point where not only did he have to shield himself away from the sun, because basically, if we really want to go there, at this point in time, even though Michael Jackson was in his 30s and in his 40s, he didn't have the skin of a 30-year-old black man. His skin was in such a messed up state due to all of the things that he had to go through, that in turn, he had the skin of a 50-year-old, even a 60-year-old white man or a white woman, however you want to take it. And for somebody that we've seen since they were a baby, since they were a kid, and seeing them transform like that, it does look scary. It does look wacko. It does look wacky. It does look weird. And due to people feeling like that they know about the way Michael Jackson was raised and how he was brought up, it's easy for you to craft an assumption that maybe Michael Jackson did this to himself. But me doing a lot of research and with a little bit of channeling that I did do, I was finding out that when Mike would have these surgeries and they were botched surgeries, it was to the point where Michael Jackson couldn't even hardly breathe, better yet through his nose. And he was telling me how you breathing through your nose and the problems with circular breathing that you're gonna have if something is wrong with your nose and your nasal passage. So when Michael Jackson was having those surgeries, it wasn't a surgery to make himself cosmetically look so much different from the person that he was back in the 80s and back in the 70s because he was insecure with himself and all of that. No, he was literally having these surgeries so he can breathe and so he can sing the way he was able to sing when he had that big brown nose. And I can't lie, this stuff really upset Michael Jackson, because like I was saying, people really thought that he didn't want to be black. People was coming up with all of these assumptions about Michael Jackson's sexuality and all of that, because Michael Jackson's management team and the people that were around him really tried to keep a secret the black women that Michael Jackson really was messing with, and they were told to keep that part of Michael Jackson's life secret. So the only people that you really seen Michael Jackson around was white women for the most part and white kids, and somebody who's on the opposite side that's just from the outside looking in. If you didn't know too much about Michael Jackson personal life, and the only thing that you really knew is stuff about what you seen in the media and what you seen on TV and all of that, you would really and truly think that Michael Jackson was a sellout. And since his face was done the way it was done, anything that the media wanted to portray about Michael Jackson, all they had to do was just take a candid and unsolicited picture of Michael Jackson while he's going through his medical issues that he was going through, to the point where he had to start wearing masks around and start having umbrellas and stuff in the summertime. So he was already out here looking super weird, but it wasn't his fault. But like I say, it's so easy to paint a narrative about somebody, and then you see that out of all of those beautiful black women that Michael Jackson got with, the one that he chose to marry was a white woman, Lisa Marie Presley. You see what I mean? Now, like I said on the Archangel Michael Chronicles Part 3, now, if Dangerous was the start of Archangel Michael as far as the many transformations that Michael Jackson did throughout his lifetime, then it's very applicable to say that during the history era, which was from mid 1994 all the way till 1996, even though the takedown process started for Michael in 1993, this history era of Michael Jackson would be the last time that we would see him as the Archangel Michael, with his last and final transformation being that of a Baron Samedi, Grim Reaper type of character, aka Wacko Jacko, the Dead Man Walking. And since this album was published on Michael Jackson's new label, MJJ Productions, and he was able to have a whole lot more creative control than he have on any of his other albums. A lot of his frustrations that he was going through in his everyday life and all the stuff that was going on with him with the media and the press and the tabloids and the paranoia of it all, he would put all of that into his music, as you can see in this album. So History, Past, Present, and Future Book 1 was produced on June 20th, 1995. And I'm gonna stay on this album for a while because there's a few things that I just want to point out with this particular album. First off, the teaser trailer for this album was fucking fire. Like, who do you really know back in that time who could pull something like this off? Like, wow. Now, this is the thing that I got strictly from Channel, and this actually came from Oshun herself, meaning that so many people, they look at the number 6 as the sacrificial number and stuff like that. But in all honesty, the name of the game is, since you're not supposed to get to the level 7, they might as well get you within a matter of 6s, because 6 is in between the 5 and the 7. But the true number of sacrifice and charity and stuff like that is the number 5. Now, why did I bring up the number 5? Because when you add 6 plus 2 plus 1 plus 9 plus 9 plus 5, you get the number 32, and 32, 3 plus 2 equals 5. So the 5 energy is around this whole album. Now with Michael Jackson, this number sequence that equals 32 that simples down to the number 5 isn't something that's foreign to Michael Jackson when we talk about these songs and stuff like that. Because remember on part 3 when I was talking about Jam from the Dangerous album, and remember when I was talking about how you had 2 MJJs, you had Michael Joseph Jackson and Michael Jeffrey Jordan, and they came together to do that song Jam in that video, and it seemed like symbolically and subconsciously Michael Jackson was passing on his power to Michael Jordan, the same way that in Space Jam the real basketball players passed on their power through the basketball to the Monstars, and the Monstars had the powers of the NBA basketball players. Now, remember how I told y'all that that Jam video was released on July the 13th, 1992, and I showed y'all how when I simplified all of those numbers down, it equaled 32, which simplifies to the number 5. Now, y'all should know by now, there is no coincidence when it comes to the release of these songs, because it's like a puzzle piece to a bigger plot. Now, I outlined for y'all who it was that Michael Jackson was supposed to be the sacrificial lamb for, spiritual wise, with Jam. So for y'all homework, I want y'all to let me know what people and what Judas Iscariot was around Michael Jackson for this album. And a couple people I'm gonna call out, but trust me, this rabbit hole goes a whole lot deeper. And if I were to go down it, this would be damn near a 10-part series or whatever. If I were to go down every single person that Michael Jackson had around him that stabbed him in the back, either while he was alive and he was down on his luck and he was going broke, all the way to people throwing dirt on his name during his death, even though when he was alive, he treated them so nicely and he treated them with so much respect and admiration. So with all of that being said, you already know that in this album, he really had to beef it up when it came to the production of it, because he really wanted to make this album series a slap in the face when it came to everyone who still doubted him and felt like that he couldn't be the iconic Michael Jackson that we always remembered him to be. So he went and got Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, Dallas Austin, David Foster, along with some other heavy hitters in the music industry to make this album. Now there's a few connections that I want to talk about, along with highlighting some songs, key songs from this album, and as I always do, telling y'all some things that y'all might not have known about. So the first connection that I want to talk about, which is something that I kind of alluded to in my previous videos, and also I talked about it a little bit in my live stream when I was going on my 24-hour fast. But for a minute, I want to shed a little bit of light on a certain artist who in 1994 scheduled a meeting with Michael Jackson while he was working on the History album. And spectators was thinking that this was going to end up being a very faded musical collaboration, something that the world would have wanted to happen. But things really didn't go the way that we all thought, or did it? And this person is Prince. Now, this is the thing about Prince, man. He's a real cool dude, real laid back, you know, real funny guy, very knowledgeable guy. But Prince is super misunderstood. And that's the one thing that Michael Jackson and Prince had in common. They were totally misunderstood. And the crazy part about it is the two things that Michael Jackson and Prince had in common: everybody thought that they were gay, and everybody thought that they were weird, and also everybody thought that they were beefing with each other, which all of those things that I mentioned were furthest from the truth. Now, when I got into Prince's energy, he was like, my tea is my tea. So he was like, man, if you want to do something on me, you're going to have to do a full series about Prince. But for the sake of this podcast, I just want to touch on a few things about Prince. Now, Prince Rogers Nelson, aka his stage name Prince, was born on June 7th, 1958. Now, as you can already see, with Prince's astrology mixed with Michael Jackson's astrology, you can also see how so similar they are, and you can also see how opposite they are. And this is a really rare thing when you talk about the music industry and different aspects of Hollywood, where you would have two figures like Michael Jackson and Prince alive at the same time, performing at the same time, and in the spotlight at the very same time. Just like if 23-year-old Michael Jordan and 23-year-old Kobe was playing in the NBA at the same time. Michael Jordan with the Untouchables versus Kobe and the Lakers with Shaq on it. That's how monumental having two beings like this in the same limelight at the same time. And the crazy part about it is that both of these beings were equally endowed with this limited power and potentiality, with both Prince and Michael Jackson having a Pisces moon. But see, when you look at the life path of these two, that's when you really see how opposite they are from each other, as far as the true real reason why there could be a Michael J. Jordan and a Michael J. Jackson collaboration, but there couldn't be a Michael Jackson and Prince collaboration. And to better explain this, let's go back to the one and only collaboration that we can really say, kinda say, that Prince and Michael Jackson had on that fateful day of August the 20th, 1983, when James Brown, at the end of one of his great concert runs, in which back in that time, James Brown was the official Papa Legba of the music industry. And on this fateful day, James Brown would do the impossible.
If you will, let's give another standing ovation for a young man sitting behind you that you have no idea who's in the audience. Michael Jackson! Move Michael Jackson! Michael Jackson! Michael Jackson! Michael Jackson! Michael Jackson! You gotta come up and say something! You gotta come up and say something! Michael Jackson, come on up, man! Come up and say something! You gotta come up and say something!
Now, the thing about it is, when you actually pay attention to what happened on that particular day, and you really look at it in a very occult type of way, you can look at that one performance and you can truly tell what both of their life path was if you really paid attention to it. Now, looking at this on a more metaphysical type of level, James Brown being the big Papa Legba figure at that time, out of all of those hundreds and thousands of people that was at that Beverly Center that day, he just so happened to look across the crowd and see a spirit that got the same type of innocence as him, that got that same type of SU divine inner child type of innocence, and it was shining like a beacon of light. Because remember, Michael Jackson, he just went to that concert just to pay homage to his idol and, just to have fun, and he wasn't necessarily going there to be seen. When you really look at how Michael Jackson was placed, he was slick trying to hide from everybody. But see, one thing about Papa Legba, you can't trick the trickster and you can't hide from your life path. So with James Brown never being the type of person to feel like that nobody is better than him, or this person right here doesn't deserve shine or whatever, he seen that with him getting up there in age, it was going to be time for him to pass the mantle to somebody else who was going to carry on the mission of being the next Papa Legba figure in the music industry. And this is when he locked eyes on Michael Jackson and called him up to the stage. And as you can see, even though this was literally 3 months after he did his iconic Motown 25 performance, which happened in May, so you would think out of all of these years, and especially with that performance that he just put on, that was arguably one of the greatest performances in that time frame, you would think that Michael Jackson would be super pompous and super dominant and arrogant and alpha. But Michael Jackson's energy when he got called up, it's kind of like when you got this great teacher and you got this student who's kind of at the back of the class, you know, he's kind of shy. He doesn't want to get bullied because he doesn't really like to fight. But this kid is really, really smart and he knows all the answers. But just to keep the peace, he'll just let other people answer it and he'll just keep his hand down. And one day the teacher figures this out, and instead of calling somebody else's name to answer the question, he or she singles him out. And you know, that kind of embarrassed but super shy, rosy cheeks, jittery type of look that person would have that's sitting in the back of the class. That's the same type of energy that Michael Jackson had when James Brown, his longtime idol, called him out on the stage. So metaphysically, it showed that Michael Jackson's purpose was to introduce a type of innocence that, being honest with you, you're never truly gonna see that type of innocence being portrayed again the way Michael Jackson portrayed it. And then when Michael Jackson got in front of that microphone, that innocence that he had turned into alpha energy, and he literally started to command the stage as if this was set up all along, and he already knew that he was going to be called up there. And man, you could just see the electricity and the joy that everybody on that stage had when Michael Jackson started singing and dancing and all of that stuff and doing the moonwalk on stage and all of that. You see how proud James Brown looked, and you see how energetic and overjoyed the band looked and all of that stuff, because like I said, that innocence, it gives you a type of joy that this world just can't give to you. And since the world didn't give it to you, the world can't take it away. Going back to Michael Jackson's skin, even though Michael Jackson barely had melanin, because as we can see on Michael Jackson's autopsy, he still had parts of his body that he covered up all the time that was still brown. His whole body didn't turn white like people assumed that it did. But the reason why Michael Jackson, through all of his health problems with his body shutting down and all of this stuff, was still able to be such a dynamite on stage is because of his soul, which was powered by his innocence. And I swear that since Michael Jackson, this has truly been a conundrum that this system of soulless beings have been trying to seal up ever since. So another thing that Michael Jackson was supposed to bring to the earth was a form of humility that you never truly see like that anymore as well, because even back then Michael Jackson had a big name, and even though he could have just went on stage, took all of the positive energy, stayed on there, did his thing, left the stage and let the show end. No, Michael Jackson looked out in the audience and he saw one of his own. Now, he may not have understood why he did what he did, but he knows spiritually that him and this other person came from the same place. So he recognizes energy-wise that this person has just as much as a life purpose to this music industry that he's supposed to bring than he does. And that really shows you how humble of a man that Michael really was, even back then when he was reaching the peak of his new fame, that he would go and whisper in James Brown's ear. And that's when James Brown brought Prince to the stage.
Give him a big round of applause because he just insisted that I introduce Prince. He's here. Prince. Prince. Prince.
Now, everybody pay close attention to what Prince did on stage, because the energy is totally different, but it's really two sides of the same coin. Now, when Prince came to the stage, unlike Michael Jackson, who came really shy and really innocent and stuff like that, Prince came to the stage acting like he was the opening act. He had his shirt all off, walking with a strut, went and grabbed one of the guys' guitars. And it's crazy that Prince and Michael Jackson's performances are both memorable, but they're memorable for different reasons. When you look at the way Prince performed, when he was really trying to show out and do his guitar solo, but the guitar didn't work. So then he tried to do these real unorthodox things on the microphone. And then when he left the stage, he tore down the lamppost. And see, all of these things were significant when we're talking about the different life paths that both of these artists had. Because when you look at what Prince was supposed to bring to the world with his music, was that his music and his mission was all about, number one, control. Michael Jackson did this subconsciously through his innocence, but Prince, he did this in a more masculine way and a more dominant type of way, which is two sides of the same coin when you really think about it. Michael Jackson, he started off innocent before coming to the stage, and then once he got to the stage, that's when he turned alpha. With Prince, it was a little different. He came to the stage alpha, but when it was time for him to perform, there was little small innocent mistakes that was going on with Prince that just made him seem like he was just fucking up the show on purpose. The other thing is, when you put them together side by side, you will see that Michael Jackson, he cared too much. Prince, he didn't care enough. That's the reason why towards the end of Prince's life, he went through the things that he went through, because all throughout Prince's life, it was all about being dominant, always being in control of his own narrative. And for the most part, it was about tearing down different constructs, just like the way he tore down that lamppost. And overall, Prince's message was about being unapologetically you. And when you think about it, being innocent as well as being unapologetically you is ultimately the same thing, but Michael Jackson and Prince just expressed it in their own special way. And with Prince, this makes so much sense, because with him being the birth path number 9 and his favorite color being purple, the first word that popped out of my head is Oya. And we all know that Oya is the goddess of change. She represents being unapologetic, tearing down certain constructs, because she is that beautiful woman that has a lot of masculinity within her. Just like how Prince was a man in all aspects of the word, but since he was a Gemini, he was able to show people that he could be a manly man, still dress up in a feminine type of way and make feminine type of music, but that doesn't mean that he's effeminate, or that doesn't mean that he's gay or that he's been emasculated. Same thing with Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was a very manly man, but with his life path, with Michael Jackson having the innocence that he has, and then also putting into account his upbringing and all of that type of stuff, the way Michael Jackson would act with his innocence, people were saying that Michael Jackson was homosexual, saying that he was a pedophile and all of that stuff, because he had a lot of children around him. But all the women that he had around him, the media made sure to keep all of that under wraps and to keep all of that secret. Now, with me getting into the energy of Prince, he pointed out this interview that happened with Prince in 1999. Now, this is the thing. Around this time, Prince was out here predicting a lot of things like 9/11 and all of this stuff. And not going too much into Prince, but he was a very, very awakened brother, and he logically knew what was up. Now, the thing about Michael Jackson, he was awakened too, but it was more on a feminine type of level. Like, he would feel things. He would feel that certain things were wrong, and he would feel that he need to address certain things, or he feels that different injustices aren't right and stuff like this. But Prince, he had a certain sense of knowing that it really took Michael Jackson to go through a lot of physical and emotional pain to get the same knowing that Prince learned through mental and spiritual awakenings. So in this interview, they was asking Prince if there was a fight between him and Michael Jackson, who would win. And it was very, very interesting what Prince had to say.
Hypothetically, who would win in a fist fight, you or Michael Jackson? Both roughly, the same size, you have both have the high-pitched sound, What do your right hooks like?
Oh my goodness. He's a plant, y'all. But I plant him. Keep it light, keep it light.
How about this?
Michael's not a fighter, he's a lover. Can I just say something? I've never really spoke publicly about Michael. We should all just kind of chill, because You know, he may know something none of us really know. And just like, well, let's wait and see. Let's wait it out. You know, let's just wait it out. You never know, right? You just never know.
Now, due to all of this BS that I've been going through when it comes to me doing these podcasts and my videos not being approved because of using certain copyrighted content, I can't play this whole clip. And I know that the clip that I played was kind of blurry, so I'm gonna read to y'all what Prince actually said. Now, y'all heard him when he said that Michael is a plant, and I planted him. If somebody would have said something like that back in the day, it would have got a way bigger uproar, but it really seemed like they kind of tossed that to the side. And then when he said that Michael Jackson is a lover, not a fighter, you see that the audience started to laugh. But see, it was something else that Prince said about Michael Jackson that I feel like should really put the rumors to rest that they was beefing with each other. And what he said was, can I just say something? I never really spoke publicly about Michael. We should, just chill, because it's, he may know something none of us really don't know. And just like, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see, just wait it out. You never know, because you just never know. Ultimately, we all got to come back home. Let's just make a home for everybody. Now, Geminis, because I'm a Gemini. When it's something that we really want to touch on, but we know that if we say too much, certain bad things will happen to people, but we know certain information, we tend to talk in circles. And a lot of people look at that as being two-faced or whatever, but I just look at it as sometimes it's certain secrets that you have to expose a little bit, but not to the point where the person who gave you the secret is in jeopardy. So what did Prince mean when he said that Michael Jackson was a plant and I planted him? Well, part of that reason was because of the things that Prince and Michael Jackson talked about back in 1994 when they would meet up for the first time in a private environment. And you know what? I'm gonna let my people at The Detail talk to y'all about that a little bit.
On July 14, 1994, Prince visited Michael in the early afternoon to discuss recording a song for Jackson's upcoming release, History. It was 5 years after the release of Prince and Madonna's duet, Love Song, so he was probably more open to the idea. Brian Vibberts, an engineer on the album, remembers that Prince arrived with 2 huge bodyguards. The 3 of them walked right by him and into Michael's lounge. Rob Hoffman, another engineer on History, reported that Michael Jackson and Prince did have a meeting during its recording, saying that they were all kicked out of the room, however, Prince's wishes and not Michael's, so no one ever knew what was said in that room. Prince reportedly talked with Michael for a few hours before leaving. Prince only visited that one time during the History session.
Now, with me being a Gemini and having a lot of Virgo friends who are into the same things that I'm into, the dynamic between those two, it's not even a really foreign type of thing, because when you look at Michael Jackson, who was pretty much destined to be what he was, and then when you look at Prince, somebody who had to really work hard to prove to everybody that he's his own entity and that he's just as powerful, if not more powerful, than the other person that's from his same place growing up that already set such a high standard. I mean, look at it as you got this one person, he graduated from high school as the valedictorian. So he's already assumed to be this very highly accomplished person when he goes out there into the world, because he did so good in school. And then you got this other person, maybe he was the dropout, and truth be told, he was just as smart, if not maybe a little smarter than the valedictorian. But it was just that instead of him paying attention in school, which he felt like was an indoctrination camp anyway, he decided to do other things, which led to him being dropped out, because he was such a rebellious soul and he was such an unapologetic being in a system where there's no room for you if you don't want to be controlled by them. And this is the way that Prince felt every time people would try to compare him to Michael Jackson. This is the way that Prince felt every time people would keep on suggesting Prince that maybe he should do a joint album or do a joint collaboration with Michael Jackson. And this is the reason why for a long time it would seem like Prince was trying to distance himself away from Michael Jackson, because deep down inside, Prince already knew that him and Michael Jackson came from the same place, but he also knew how much of a leg up that Michael Jackson potentially had over him. So Prince wasn't trying to distance himself from Michael Jackson and all of this stuff because he didn't like Michael Jackson, because secretly Prince was a fan of Michael, just like Michael secretly was a fan of Prince. It was just that Prince wanted to be respected as his own entity that was capable of giving you a unique experience that's unique to Prince. And it took him a little minute to develop and to come out with that. So with Michael Jackson being the innocent one, he couldn't understand why Prince was the way he was, but he respected Prince and his showmanship and his ideas and just him being so unapologetic with his music and all of that type of stuff. And then with Prince, he knew that until he really solidified, because see, we're still talking about the energy of Oya here and how Oya likes to be the center of attention, just like Oshun. It's just that when Oshun doesn't get the attention that she wants, she'll start to cry and her tears create rivers. Well, when Oya doesn't get the attention that she feels like she deserves, she creates storms, aka raging winds. It's the same thing, it's just that the result is just a little bit different. So in 1994, when Prince and Michael would finally meet up, they was able to hash out a lot of things. Michael Jackson was able to finally feel where Prince is coming from, and Prince was finally able to understand where Michael Jackson was coming from. And one of the things that Prince really wanted Michael Jackson to do with his fame and his star power was to not only focus on the children and focus on the innocence, but to also focus on the black community in general. Focus on all the injustices that's going on right under our nose in our own communities, and the political agenda of white supremacy and the powers that be to really shut up people with that innocence who wants to go out and lead the revolution. And see, me being a Gemini, I understand that sometimes with the way that we can talk with our mental and all of that, we can really fire somebody up just with our words alone, just with the way we communicate. We can communicate very passionately to somebody and we can rile them up to do things. And some of these things, we didn't even really think that they would go that far, which in Michael Jackson's case, he truly started to get really passionate about that as well. The main thing that Prince really regretted to tell Michael Jackson was that in doing this, you're gonna lose a lot of those Hollywood friends that you thought you had. You was gonna lose a lot of those sponsorships and a lot of the TV and the media publicity, positive publicity that you had. You're gonna be put into the spotlight in so many bad ways, so your name can be tarnished in the way it's gonna make you feel. Because see, when it comes to Geminis, we express our emotions differently than most people because we're heavily logical beings. So it was a lot of things like that that Prince kind of shrugged off because it's not really something that he cares about or that he deals with. But looking at this in hindsight, he says that he really wished that he could have really broke down the consequences to Michael Jackson, because with Michael Jackson still having this Archangel Michael energy about him, he really felt like that he could save so many people. He really felt like that he could use his stardom and his fame and his fortune to do so many positive things in the world. So many positive things that me doing my research, I didn't even realize all the stuff that he did, all of the things behind the scenes that he was doing, saving people's lives and saving children's lives and all of these heroic things. It's crazy that we live in a time in media to where people can be doing so much good, and this person can be a superstar, a mega superstar like Michael Jackson, and it's crazy how they can still bury the good things that you do, and whatever narrative that they want to paint of you, it's still gonna be painted. And Michael Jackson learned all of these things during the making of this album, and after his talk with Prince, he had a totally different outlook just on everything. He slowly started to see people for who and what they really were, all the way down to his family, to the people that he had around him, even to his wife, you know. And the more he would travel and the more he would see that a lot of the injustices that was going on, it wasn't just going on in America. A lot of this stuff was going on all around the world. And this is when he truly started to see that the main people that he really thought was going to stand up with him while he was exposing all of these injustices and exposing all of this stuff that's wrong, he started to see that these people that he thought was going to stand with him, a lot of them were a part of the problem all along. And then he started to see how people, one by one, little by little, would turn their back on Michael and spiral him into a really big depression, because in a lot of ways he started to kind of feel like a military vet, you know, somebody who spent their whole life serving their country, ducking bullets and ducking all of these landmines and all of this stuff, just to come back to the States and be treated like garbage, be treated like the scum of the earth after you done all of these things to save your country and to save your people. And one of these songs that he really voiced these type of political and personal frustrations on was a song called They Don't Really Care About Us. Now, this is one of my favorite songs from the History album, and I picked this song because this is the 5th single from Michael Jackson's History album, and we all know that the number 5 represents Oshun, which in this case represents Michael Jackson really being that sacrificial lamb, putting himself out there as a martyr to really try to show us the stuff that was going on all around the world with these injustices. Now, just a little history, about 5 months after this single was released and the video was released, because this song as a single was released on April the 16th, 1996. That simplifies down to the number 9. So we know that this is slowly going into Michael Jackson's last transformation, being that of the King of Death. We also see that the length of it was 4 minutes and 44 seconds. That's the number 12. That's the number 3. The LP edit version was 4 minutes and 11 seconds. There go your 6. And it's also not a coincidence that, as you can see, the single cover, it looks like they have They Don't Care About Us written in this red, bloody type of color, the same color that Thriller was written in. Now, all of this stuff is going to make sense when I get to the Blood on the Dance Floor album and I start talking about Michael Jackson's short film. But it was alleged that Tupac and Michael Jackson was supposed to do a remix to the song They Don't Really Care About Us, but in this time of April 96, Tupac was in jail. So Michael Jackson tried to do his music video in the same prison that Tupac was in, which is the original banned video of that song. But I think something happened where it wasn't the right prison, or it was something that happened that it didn't come to pass. And then, as we know, Tupac ended up releasing a song called They Don't Give a Fuck About Us, which came out later in his life. And then he ended up dying in September of 1996. But aside from that, the original video, which was directed by Spike Lee, it was first shot in 2 locations. It was shot in Brazil and also in a favela, aka a ghetto of Rio de Janeiro, called Dona Marta. Now, there was a lot of controversy around this song, especially first of all when it came to the video. Now, even this video of They Don't Really Care About Us was about to be banned because the state authorities tried to ban it over fears that the video would damage their image, because there was talks about the 2004 Olympics being in the works in Rio de Janeiro. But the thing about it is, just like in the prison video, you see that the residents and the inmates of those areas were so happy and they were so respectful when Michael Jackson was there. He was able to make them behave in a way that the wardens couldn't even make them behave. He was able to control different crowds and stuff like that in a way that huge, big name public speakers couldn't even control their crowd. And it was a fascinating thing to see. But it's not foreign to Michael Jackson, because remember, in the Bad video and the Beat It video, Michael Jackson hired real gangsters and real Crips and real Bloods on the set, and they was dancing and had knives and all of that stuff. And you see that in the presence of Michael Jackson, everybody was super cordial. There was no type of negativity or any type of fighting or killing or shooting or anything like that going on. And that's because in Michael Jackson's innocent presence, it's kind of like trying to have a really negative type of argument in front of 2 babies or something. You just wouldn't feel right being in that low vibrational state around Michael Jackson. And the reason why that the residents of the era was so happy that Michael Jackson was doing this was because they was glad to see somebody with such an influence and such power as Michael Jackson wanting to shed light on the problems that was going on, not only in the prisons but also in Brazil. Now, as far as the industry is concerned, we already knew that they wasn't going to really show the prison one, because we know how much the prison industrial complex makes so much money off of hip hop music and rap music and gangster rap and all that type of stuff. So Michael Jackson was kind of fucking with the church's money, but you know, he wanted to kind of push it anyway just to see. But he kind of had the Brazil video, which was equally as bad, but Brazil isn't on American soil like the prison one was. So they was like, you know what, this Brazil video is the lesser of 2 evils, so we're just gonna release this one. Now, commercially, They Don't Really Care About Us became a top 10 hit, and it became a staple in not only the black community, but just all over the world. And I mean, when Michael Jackson would go out and perform this song, the visuals of it would be stunning. So I talked about the Michael Jackson and Prince connection, and I talked about the Michael Jackson and Tupac connection that didn't happen. But there was also somebody else that made it onto this album that I didn't even realize it until now when I went back and took another listen at the History album. And this person was another artist that was supposed to bring the Papa Legba energy into the world as far as in the rap spectrum of the music industry. That's why in his later years, he will go on to call himself Big Papa after Big Papa Legba. And since I said that, you already know who I'm talking about. None other than Biggie Smalls, aka the Notorious B.I.G.
To elaborate a bit on the Notorious Big session, it was kind of like this. Michael used to call people and ask them to participate on albums. It was interesting knowing that nearly anyone on the planet would come to the phone if it were Michael calling. Anyway, I heard rumors that Big was going to come, and I was excited about that. I knew that I would be the one to record that, as I had recorded nearly all of that tune, this time around. So Dallas and I were expecting him any minute, and pretty much on time, Notorious strolls in. He was quite an imposing figure when he walked in, as he was quite popular at the time. I had no idea what to expect in terms of attitude, but he seemed nice when he walked in. No problem. But almost immediately, he blurted out, "Yo, Dallas, can I meet Mike?" To which Dallas responded that he thought so. Biggie went on to talk about how much this opportunity meant to him, as Michael was his hero. Anyway, Dallas tells him that we're gonna lay down the rap first. So Biggie heads in the booth, we get some headphone levels, and we get ready to start recording. So we hit the big red button on a Sony 3348 machine, and away we go. During his first take, Dallas and I looked at each other because it was spot on. I was impressed, and so was Dallas. We listened back, and Dallas was like, "Wow, I think we got it." As I recall, we took another take for good measure, but I'm fairly certain we ended up using a first take. So Notorious comes in and asks if he can meet Michael now. We sent word to the back room where Michael was working that Biggie was finished and wanted to meet him. Simply for security, Michael's security would enter and make sure that no one was in the room that shouldn't be, and once it was confirmed that it was just me, Biggie, and Dallas, Michael came in. Biggie nearly broke out in tears. I could tell how much this meant to him. Well, Michael could have this effect on anyone, even the most hardcore rappers. Biggie was tripping up on his words, bowing down and telling Michael how much his music meant to him in his life. Michael was, as always, very humble, and kept smiling while Biggie just went on and on how much he loved Michael. I watched Biggie just become this big butterball of a man, and it was really sweet to witness. After all, we are all just people. Michael finally asked to hear what we had done, and we popped it up on the big speakers and let her go. "Oh, let's hear it again," I recall Michael saying, and we listened again. Michael just loved it and thanked Biggie for coming all the way from Philadelphia. Biggie asked rather sheepishly if he could get a photo, and Michael agreed. A shot was taken, we listened again, and Michael thanked Biggie. Michael said goodbye, leaving Biggie just standing there looking completely stunned. It'll always remain a great, great memory.
As you heard in that clip, this was a really, really, really big thing for them to collaborate with each other. But see, it's something that I'm kind of seeing here as far as a pattern. A lot of these artists that I'm naming that either did collaborate with Michael Jackson in some type of way, or at least meet up with him, a lot of the significant people had birth path number 9s. Lisa Marie Presley, Prince, even Biggie Smalls has the life path number 9. And it seemed like all of the people with the life path number 9s that he would meet along his journey, they were very, very genuine, but also very short-lived connections and interactions. Now, just to note, the song This Time Around was the only genuine collaboration that Michael Jackson and Biggie Smalls ever did. And it's also giving you a glimpse into this new transformation that Michael Jackson is about to go under. Because when we look at the date of the release of this song, which was coincidentally my little brother's birthday, 1 + 2 + 2 + 6 + 1 + 9 + 9 + 5, you get 35, which equals the number 8. Now, it's not a coincidence that 8 is that manifestation number. When you flip it sideways, it means infinity, aka what goes around comes around. And Michael Jackson named this song This Time Around, really trying to portray to y'all what his next cycle is about to be before he leaves this earth. And also, last but not least, it's not a coincidence that this song came out during the Capricorn season, at least as a single it did. And when you look at this Michael Jackson picture that was, I guess, supposed to be a teaser for the song. It's not a coincidence that you see the M in Michael shaped up like werewolf horns, aka goat ears. And we know that the symbol of Capricorn is the goat, which was also a Leo sign, aka Akasha. And this was around the time that everybody was solidifying Michael Jackson as one of the greatest artists of all time. So he was already labeled as the GOAT, and these collaborations on this album really helped to solidify that. And just about everyone who collaborated with Michael Jackson on this project felt like that as well. Now, like I said, this time around it's the only real collaboration with Biggie, even though we all know that Biggie and Michael Jackson would collaborate again after Biggie's death. 2 years after this time around will be released. So Michael Jackson and Biggie never really got a chance to perform this song live. But we know that 6 years after History came out, Biggie would end up on another Michael Jackson song called Unbreakable on Michael Jackson's Invincible album, in which he embodied the Baron Samedi archetype all the way towards his death. And for that particular song about Unbreakable, Michael Jackson was really trying to find somebody who could really match his intensity as well as his energy on that song. And that's when Rodney Jerkins, the producer of Unbreakable, presented Michael Jackson with this unreleased Biggie rap that he thought would fit perfectly on Unbreakable. And Michael Jackson fell so much in love with the verse that he had to put it on his track. Now, in general, History was a very well put together album. Disc 1 was just about remastered and repackaged versions of some of his greatest hits, ranging from Billie Jean, Black and White, Rock With You, You Wanna Be Starting Something, Heal the World, Beat It, Thriller, Bad, and the list goes on and on. Now, where Michael Jackson really shines with his new material is in disc 2 of this album. You got songs like They Don't Care About Us, Stranger in Moscow, that talks about his hard times dealing with fame and dealing with the scrutiny that he was going through. He had songs like Money, talking about how people would do anything for money, including sell their soul to the devil. You had really heartfelt songs that really pulled on your heartstrings, like Smile and You Are Not Alone, which was written by R. Kelly. And in the video, it shows Michael Jackson nude with his then wife at the time, Lisa Marie Presley. Then you had certain rock hits that flooded over into that genre, like one of my favorite songs, Come Together, which was actually recorded in 1988, and also D.S. that featured Slash, which he was talking about his anger by his allegations and his perception of being mistreated by the police and the media, and the negative effects that all of those things had on his health. But before I talk about one of his most iconic collaborations on this album, I want to stop for a minute and shed some light on this song, which was track number 14 on this album. 4 + 1 is 5. And this song was called Little Susie. Now, Little Susie is one of those really melancholy, really sad songs that I would normally pass up until Mike really explained to me how pivotal and how important this song really was, to him. So I'm gonna first start off by just telling y'all the lyrics, and then after that, I'm gonna tell y'all the story behind the lyrics. So Michael Jackson writes, somebody killed Little Susie, the girl with the tune who sings in the daytime at noon. She was there screaming, beating her voice in her doom, but nobody came to her soon. A fall down the stairs, her dress torn, oh the blood in her hair, a mystery so sullen in the air. She lie there so tenderly, fashioned so slenderly, lift her with care, oh the blood in her hair. Man, really sad story. So let's keep reading. Everyone came to see the girl that is now dead. So blind, stare the eyes in her head, and suddenly a voice from the crowd said, this girl lived in vain. Her face bare such agony, such strain. But only the man from next door knew Little Susie and how he cried. As he reached down to close Susie's eyes, she lay there so tenderly, fashioned so slenderly, lift her with care, oh the blood in her hair. The next verse goes, it was all for God's sake, for her singing the tune, for someone to feel her despair, to be damned, to know hoping is dead and you're doomed. Then to scream out and nobody's there, she knew no one cared. Father left home, poor mother died, leaving Susie alone. Grandfather's soul too had flown, no one to care, just to love her. How much can one bear? Rejecting the needs in her prayers, neglection can kill, like a knife in your soul. Oh, it will. Little Susie's fought so hard to live. She lie there so tenderly, fashioned so slenderly, lift her with care, so young and so fair. Man, that was so sad just reading that. Now imagine when you listen to the actual song about little Susie, how sad it was. And now I gotta drop another bombshell on y'all, because this song is actually based on a true story that actually happened. And when Michael Jackson found out about this, he had to make his own version of it. So just like I did with the Peter Pan story, this is the real story of little Susie. Now, the real Susie died in 1972, and Michael Jackson composed the song for her and published it in 1995. So the story goes, once upon a time, there lived a little girl named Susie. She was like the child any parent would dream of, smart, sweet, and adorable. She did everything for her family, but nobody loved her. Her mother was a drug dealer and her father was in a mental institution. Her older sister Anna was the only one who could take care of her. Anna was the mother Susie never had and loved Susie like a daughter rather than a sister. But one day, Anna was walking to the market and she was hit by a truck and dies soon after in a nearby hospital. So poor little Susie cried and didn't know who would take care of her now. She starved for days and never once got to leave the cold, dark house because she didn't really know of any type of life outside of the house because of how sheltered she was. So finally, her mother died of an overdose of drugs and Susie was sent to the mountains to live with her grandfather. Her grandfather raped and abused her for 2 whole years. One day, he got drunk and left the house, leaving little Susie to fend for herself. So she went upstairs to listen to her music box. Then someone broke into the house to steal all of their money and viciously attacked poor Susie. When the police came to investigate, all the money was gone and Susie lay on the bottom step of the staircase, eyes rolled back and blood drenching from her hair, dead. After only a quick look, the men pushed Susie's body aside and continued the investigation. Her body was then burned to ashes, and those ashes were given to her grandfather. But only a week later, he lost interest in them and dumped them into the river. They say that to this day, if you call Susie's name and listen hard enough, you can hear her sad and innocent cries out for help that never came. Whew. Oh my God. That was so sad. That was so sad. Man, see, this is the reason why, man. I just can't understand why people still think out of all of these years, like out of all of this being proven innocent, you still got people in this world who still looks at Michael Jackson as a pedophile. Like, how could someone with this type of heart, how could someone with this type of love in their heart be able to do something as harmful to a child? Man, you know what? Let me get off of this. So, the moment that y'all been waiting for, let me talk about the first track that's on the second disc of the History album. Now, just to give a premise, around this time, Michael Jackson was starting to look more and more like the devil than he did of an angel and a warrior, because all the things that he did as an angel and as a warrior that would really amplify those type of claims were always kept under wraps and always kept real low key. So like I say, it's easy to paint someone as the devil when all you see are sick and twisted articles and photoshopped pictures of someone's face to make them look real evil and all of this stuff. Just like what Prince was saying. He was saying that if he lived on the West Coast and Michael Jackson lived on the East Coast, him and Michael Jackson would have been the next Tupac and Biggie clash, because the media, let them tell it, was really trying to pit Michael Jackson and Prince against each other. But like I showed y'all, even though Prince would throw little small jokes at Michael Jackson, you know, in secret, Michael Jackson would throw little small things, little jabs at Prince. They never went as far out as to publicly diss each other or say really ingenuine or super negative things about each other in the spotlight. Now, his family, on the other hand, not so much, because remember what I told y'all. The siblings in the Jackson family who wanted to hold on to the fame and the fortune, they had to play the game. And all the siblings who didn't play the game, after their stint with the Jackson 5 and all of that, they went on to live pretty much normal lives. But you had a few members of Michael Jackson's family that turned on him as well because of their own selfish reasons. And also because in a lot of cases, they were forced and they were made to come out and say certain things.
I must tell you that this is very difficult for me. That Michael is my brother. I love him a great deal, but I cannot and I will not be a silent collaborator of his crimes against small innocent children.
But before I get off this album, there was one particular person who was 10 toes down and a rider for Michael ever since she was a little girl, and even now still standing up for her brother even though he's long passed away. And this woman is none other than the original Oshun of the music industry, none other than Janet Jackson.
what they're playing. I know that. Sonny and Cher used to do that. Right. This is my chance. I'll be Cher and you be Sonny. Okay?
That's my part.
Go home, Jan. Won't you go home? Go.
Not until I sing my part.
What's your name?
Janet.
This is a story about Janet. Mr. Jackson, if you're nasty.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This was so funny because when I was in my meditation and I was thinking about the History album and then Scream came up in my head, I could just hear the voice of Mike just being super, super happy and super, super joyous. He was like, yo, can we talk about Janet? Are we gonna talk about Janet? Let's talk about Janet. Man, when I tell you, out of all of his sisters, it's like Michael and Janet were just that inseparable pair. Like, they were both individually successful in their careers and they looked out for each other in ways that the world would just never know and never understand. So why did I call Janet Jackson the original Oshun? At least when I'm talking about in this music industry standpoint. Well, let's take a minute and look at Janet Jackson's astrology. So, Janet Jackson was born on May the 16th, 1966 at 7 p.m. Now, it's funny because she was born at 7 p.m. She's a Taurus, which is one of Oshun's most widely known zodiac signs. Plus, she's a life path number 7, which means that not only does she have that real sultry and real sensual side of her, being Oshun, but with Janet Jackson being an Aries moon, she also got that spiciness and that feistiness about her too. And it gives her that Pambagera type of edge to her. And that's the thing that made Janet Jackson a problem when it came to the music industry, because she can be on some military type stuff like her brother, but then she can also keep it sensual and keep it sweet and keep it sexy, just like Oshun. And when you think about it, just like the connection between Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley, I could say that that was the same connection that Tupac and Janet Jackson had, because when you look at Tupac's astrology, Tupac is an Aries moon, just like Janet Jackson. So it wasn't a long stretch to see that Janet Jackson was the perfect actor to play as Tupac's love interest in that movie called Poetic Justice. But see, I'm not gonna go too far into Janet Jackson's life because I would have to do a whole podcast about that. But I really wanted to drive this point home that if Michael Jackson was the Elegua and Eshu of the family, then it's no coincidence that we could label Janet Jackson as the Oshun in the family. And boy, did she work her ass off to get to where she got. And that was all by design on the family's standpoint, because unlike Jermaine and a lot of Michael Jackson's brothers, who was pretty much just trying to piggyback off of the success of Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson wanted to show the world that just like how Michael Jackson represents the masculine side of the Eshu Elegua type of energy, Janet Jackson wanted to show the world that you can be that same way, but you can also be feminine with it as well. And when you see people like Beyonce and Aaliyah and a lot of those other artists that came out in the late 90s and in the early 90s, you could tell how a lot of them were heavily influenced by the likes of Janet Jackson. Cause I mean, let's be honest, who really as a woman didn't want to be like Janet Jackson in the 80s and in the 90s?
All the people out there, who do you want to work with now?
Janet Jackson. I say
That
in all
was
my
quick.
interviews.
That was
It's
quick.
no hesitation. I admire her a great deal. She's a total performer, and I love to collaborate with her on something. So if you're listening, Janet, I love you.
I understand you're a big fan of Janet Jackson.
I am a huge fan of Janet. I try to mention her in every interview because I want to meet her and at some point maybe my career collaborate with her. I admire her a great deal.
No, you've never met her.
I've never met Janet.
I never met her either.
Do you love her?
I love her.
I love her too.
And who were the artists that you looked up to when you were a kid?
I looked up to Johnny Mathis, Barbara, Janet, Stevie Wonder. I worship Stevie Wonder.
Have you met any of them?
I met Janet.
Yeah.
She's very cool. I'd love to collaborate with them. And Janet, we talked about that last time I was here.
Yeah.
Janet's
She's
great.
nice, Janet
She
Jackson.
is. She's sweet.
Do you ever plan to do a duet with any other female artists out there?
I would love to. I would love to hook up with Janet.
Janet, oh yeah.
Okay, I've been a fan of hers since I was a little girl.
Right.
So I think our styles would be right together. That'd be a nice mesh.
How would you make that happen? Could you like just call her up and say, yo, girl?
Let's see. You know, I've talked to her a few times. She's actually really, really cool. So
Uh-huh.
Janet, if you're watching, let's hook up. Let's do something.
Yeah.
That would be real hot. I'm feeling that one. Yeah.
So, respectfully, Michael Jackson let Janet Jackson spread her wings, but behind the scenes, they did help each other, because what people don't know is Janet Jackson sung background for a couple of Michael Jackson songs on the Thriller album, including PYT, in which she collabed on the background vocals with her sister LaToya Jackson. But this would be the first time in damn near 10 years that they would get together in the same studio, in the same vicinity, and make that unforgettable song called Scream. Now, Scream was released on May the 31st, 1995 as a single. Now, this shit was so planned out, because upon doing research, I found so many 7s and 6s and 9s, it ain't even funny. So let's go one by one. So you simplify the release date, you get the number 33, and 3 plus 3 is 6. So we see why this song did so well for Michael Jackson and Janet. You just take the date itself, 5 plus 3 plus 1, we get the number 9. Scream was a lead single for Michael Jackson's album History, which was his 9th solo album. And also, the length of this song was 4 minutes and 38 seconds. You simplify that down, and you got the number 6 again. And man, let me just tell y'all from off the jump, man, this is still one of my favorite Michael Jackson collaborations of all time. I mean, I could imagine how long people have been waiting for Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson to collab with each other. It's like us right now fiending for Outkast to make another album, or fiending for J. Cole and Kendrick to make an album together. It's one of those things that when it happens, it's just so magical, and it's just one of them things where it's like it's everything that we wished in a magical collaboration to happen, and everything just went without a hitch. Now, this album was named History for a reason, because Michael Jackson made a lot of history with this album. Now, this song itself won 3 MTV Video Music Awards and the Grammy Award for the Best Video. So Michael Jackson actually got a Grammy for this video. I mean, he better got one. All of these 6s and 9s and 7s that was surrounded with this song and this album. It also cost $7 million to make that video, which is listed in the Guinness World Records as the most expensive music video ever made. And Scream is also the first single in the 37-year history of Billboard to debut at number 5 on the US Billboard Hot 100 charts, where it peaked. And it also reached the top 5 of a few other countries, in places including Australia, Belgium, France, the Netherlands, Norway, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. And even though Michael and Janet was never able to perform these songs live together, they would go on to perform separate renditions of their song in their shows. And even though when Michael Jackson would perform his rendition of Scream on the History World Tour, out of respect for not having Janet Jackson there with him, he didn't feel right performing the dance part of the song without Janet. He also would kind of feel bad that he had to sing Janet's parts in the Scream song, but he understood that Janet Jackson, she had her own things that she was doing in the music industry, and Michael Jackson, he was getting ready for his History tour. And as much as Janet Jackson wanted to perform with him, she just couldn't, because the schedules and different things just didn't line up. But in 2009, 3 months after her beloved brother passed away, Janet Jackson will go on stage on the MTV Video Music Awards and do the unthinkable. Now, I know I ain't shit. I know I ain't nobody, you know, nobody famous or nothing like that. But Mike was telling me about how after that performance, Janet Jackson was just so sad. Like, she just really wished that Mike could see her. She really wished that she could have done that with Mike. And she felt like she kind of messed up. And she was kind of starting to look at herself the same way that Michael Jackson used to look at himself when people would ask him about his iconic Motown 25 performance. You know, we all know that Michael Jackson was always very, very critical of himself. And even though we'll never forget that iconic Motown 25 performance, Michael Jackson himself didn't really like that performance because it was certain small details within the dance portion that he wanted to do that he wasn't really able to pull it off, but he still managed to give us a very iconic performance. So there was a section in the dance number that Janet Jackson and Michael did together in Scream that she performed, and she felt like that she messed it up a little bit, but then then she was still able to get back on rhythm and finish it off. And Mike just wants her to know that you did so well. Like, he is so extremely proud just of you, Janet, for everything that you've always done, just for the person that you've always been. You know, you are a very, very beautiful soul. And this ain't even me talking. This is Mike talking, because I personally don't know you like that. So, but it just warms my heart every time Mike talks about Janet, because I feel the same energy of the Alegua and Oshun type of bond that y'all had. And I truly feel like when we talk about the king and queen of pop, like, people really need to give Janet Jackson that credit. You know, she may not have the same accolades as a Madonna, or she might do, because I haven't really looked into Janet Jackson's accolades like that, but I just know that just like there'll never be another Michael Jackson, I feel like too that there'll probably never be another Janet Jackson as well, because, you know, Janet Jackson had some really, really big shoes to fill. I mean, she's the great Michael Jackson's brother, for crying out loud, but I feel like she really rose to the occasion. She's doing really, really good right now, which she deserves it. You know, Mike is saying, yeah, she deserves it. You know, she been busting her ass and really persevering through, because y'all remember the Super Bowl incident that Janet Jackson went through, and all of the scrutiny and all of that stuff that she went through with that, and how fucked up that was. But see, there were a lot of white men and Jewish men and all of that who fucked up Michael Jackson's career, and even on to his death, still trying to throw salt on his name. Because see, y'all remember when I talked about Michael Jackson's Super Bowl performance, and I talked about how he went on to give Oprah Winfrey her biggest grossing interview of all time with the Michael Jackson interview. And then she went on to fund and to really, really push that Leaving Neverland documentary. Now, there's a reason why I played this clip of Scream that shows Janet Jackson and her choreographers and stuff like that dancing to the song Scream. And we all know what Scream is about. It was about the real fucked up tabloid media coverage of the child sexual abuse accusations that was made against Michael Jackson in '93, and just all of the injustices that's going on in the world. And look who you see up there in the forefront dancing his little heart out, and also being very instrumental in the choreography of that Scream performance that was a tribute to Michael Jackson. None other than Mr. Wade Robinson. And we all can see right now in 2020 how that evil and demented man was treated like royalty as a little boy, hanging around the Jacksons and all of that. And how, just like Oprah Winfrey, he waited until Michael Jackson was dead to come out spewing all of this negativity and all of these lies that's been already debunked plenty times by people like Britney Spears and other people who were very, very close and knew about Wade and Michael Jackson's relationship. He treated that boy like his own son, and he had children back then. So again, y'all see how wicked this music industry is, and how they can use the people that you helped and the people that you really looked out for. And just like that song about money, these people will literally sell their soul to the devil just for that dollar. It's real messed up, y'all. It really is. So speaking of Leaving Neverland, there was this comment that was left on my video that was telling me to look at this documentary called Square One MJ. And just so I can get this documentary some more publicity, because it's a very well done documentary talking about the child molestation trials that Michael Jackson was going through, and also shedding some light on the blatant lies and the blatant misinformation that was in that Leaving Neverland documentary.
Thursday, jurors listened as the teen contradicted his brother and sister's testimony and couldn't recall key details of the molestation allegations.
The defense pointed out that in an early police interview, the young accuser said his grandmother had told him about a certain type of sexual act, even though he had testified that Jackson had told him about it.
This young man, in a moment of high emotion with this former dean, looks the dean in the eye and says, "No, Michael Jackson didn't molest me."
I was on the witness list for the trial in 2005 because I spent the entire day with Gavin Arvizo at Neverland on February 19th, 2003. This was the very same day that Gavin and his mother Janet accused Michael of inappropriate behavior. The day that they accused Michael of wrongdoing was the day that Gavin didn't even see Michael. Instead, he was with us having fun.
So moving right along, The second half of the History album, which was called Blood on the Dance Floor, History in the Mix, was a remix album that came out on May the 20th, 1997. Now, as you can see from the History album, Michael Jackson was turning from that Archangel Michael, and now on Blood on the Dance Floor, you're seeing what Michael Jackson's final transformation is going to be, which is more of the Grim Reaper, rebellious type of archetype that still has his innocent heart, but on the outside, he already is starting to look like the dead man walking. And just to prove that, we already see that the release date simplifies down to 33 again, and it's not a coincidence that Michael Jackson has a red suit on and he's dancing on top of a Masonic checkerboard with what looks like the New York City skyline behind him, with a whole bunch of clouds and stuff like that that's rising up. Now, y'all remember that Prince foretold the events of 9/11 before 9/11 even happened. I'm finding out now that Michael Jackson was actually in New York at the time of 9/11. So, I mean, this is just a straight up conjecture, but I just feel like this picture has a lot more that meets the eye when it comes to this album cover. There's a lot of different ways that you could spin this, but when you look at the spiritual timeline of Michael Jackson's transformations, this transformation makes complete sense why Michael Jackson would dress up in all red, and also why Blood on the Dance Floor really looks like it was written in blood. And he's dancing on top of a Masonic checkerboard that the whole city is made on top of. I mean, at every hand, this dude has been trying to send y'all messages about the fucked up stuff that goes on in this music industry without just coming out and saying it like he's doing now, because with the energy that he's housing within him now, it's a lot more direct, it's a lot more vulgar, and it's a lot more to the point. And it truly seemed like the more control that Michael Jackson had in his music, the less and less promotion that he would get, and the less and less media coverage of his music and stuff like that he would get. Even though not only can you tell that Michael Jackson was really about that life when it came to exposing the evils of the music industry and different things, you can also tell that he truly listened to the advice that Prince gave him. And you can hear a lot of Prince influences in this album, because I truly feel like these were probably some of the songs that he probably sent to Prince, since it was kind of in his lane musically, and for some way or another he probably just declined it. Now, 8 of these songs on this album are just remixes from the History album, and there are 5 on here that are new songs that he wrote. Now, the title track from this album, called Blood on the Dance Floor, was a song that Michael Jackson and Teddy Riley created in 1991 in hopes for it to be on Dangerous. But their decision to rework it to be on Blood on the Dance Floor, the album, was genius in itself. Now, I know you're trying to figure out what is the correlation between Little Susie from History and this Susie that's being talked about in Blood on the Dance Floor. Now, this is the mythology that's behind it, and this probably wasn't even something that Michael Jackson was even thinking about consciously, or maybe he did, because like he said, the Most High would give him these ideas to make these songs, and he would just do it and didn't ask any questions about it. Now, you would think a woman like Susie, who died the way she did, I would imagine that Susie was an intranquil spirit. Now, just a little bit about magic. An intranquil spirit is somebody who died in a very horrible type of way, and their anger and their resentment towards what happened still keeps them on this earthly plane. And these intranquil spirits can be mounted onto different hosts in a parasitic type of way if you're in a very low vibrational type of environment where you can get possessed by these lower level type of entities. Going back to when I was talking about drinking alcohol and getting drunk and getting high in these low vibrational places like clubs and strip clubs and stuff like that, and how these alcoholic beverages, which were at first they were only used for spiritual reasons like possession and stuff like that, you have to watch out because you're inviting different lower level spirits into your being. So the reason why a lot of these women who work at these strip clubs and a lot of women that frequently go to clubs and all of that type of stuff, when you get them home, they're so crazy because they got so many different spirits living inside of them, from the ones that they invited in their being by drinking and being on drugs and all of those things, and also from all of the toxic men that that woman has had sex with throughout her whole life, you know, being a stripper and all of that type of stuff that entails. So the way it really seems like is that the cycle of Michael Jackson's albums went full circle. He went from the baby Alegba to a child Papa Legba figure, and then he went from that to Eshu, aka the Thriller Mike. Then he transformed in the bad era to be the Archangel Michael, and he would stay there all the way until the History album. So now in Blood on the Dance Floor, he's transforming into a different type of Eshu, pronounced EXU, which is a Afro-Brazilian form of Eshu, and I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. But first, before I talk about the man in red, first let me talk a little bit about the lady in red. And it was funny because to this day, I've never seen the Blood on the Dance Floor video until I did the research that I'm doing right now. And it's like, when I seen it, it just made so much sense. Like, I didn't even have to think about it. It's like the name Pambagira just screamed out at me to the point where I didn't even really have to dig so much deep and do a lot of research because it was just right there in front of you. But it's just that Michael Jackson was incorporating so much of our ancient spirituality, African spirituality. Now he's putting in a little bit of that Afro-Brazilian Kimbanda type of spirituality. That's all us, but he just did it in his own little special way. So to better understand this, let's look at the lyrics of Blood on the Dance Floor. And I'm gonna say the lyrics, and then just like I did with Little Susie, I'm gonna break down for y'all the story of who is Pambagira and her consort Eshu, and how it braids so perfectly together with this whole Blood on the Dance Floor album picture, as well as the whole theme for the video, all the way down to everybody doing these salsa dances on the video, and Michael Jackson with these two shakers in his hand, all representing the type of old school Brazilian type of dances that used to go on back in the day. So the lyrics go, she got your number, she know your game, she put you under, and it's so insane. Since you seduced her, how does it feel to know that a woman is out to kill? Every night stance is like taking a chance. It's not about love and romance, and now you're going to get it. Every hot man is out taking a chance. It's not about love and romance, and now you do regret it. Now, we all know that when Michael Jackson do these songs, they have double meanings, but this half is definitely talking about Pambagira, which is a really, really beautiful daughter of Oshun girl that got mounted by a very, very fierce and tranquil spirit that turned her into this really, really dominant but extremely feminine type of woman that's equally as fierce as well. Now, just a little bit about Pambagira, because I got another series that's coming after this one that's gonna talk about the real Queen and Slim, which is Pambagira and her consort Eshu, because honestly, I really didn't like the way they portrayed them in that movie, and I know a lot of people would agree with me. But also, a lot of y'all don't know that the premise of Queen and Slim, Bonnie and Clyde, all of these videos are based on the relationship between Pambagira and Eshu. And to note, because when Michael Jackson would go to these different places and travel and stuff like that, he would learn so much. He would learn so much about his spirituality, different things about religion and different culture and customs that would be practiced in other places, and he would come back and put these different things subliminally in his music. So just a little bit on Pambagira. She is the patron of love, desire, fire, witchcraft, revenge, and black magic. That's what that whole first part of that verse was talking about when he says, she got your number, she know your game. It's so insane. Since you seduced her, how does it feel to know that a woman is out to kill? Pambagira is depicted as a very beautiful woman who is insatiable, and she's venerated with great respect and care because of her reputation, and also for possessing great wrath. And it's also noted that Pambagira personifies female sexuality, beauty, and desire, and she has many different avatars that she's represented as. So for the sake of this video, I'm gonna be touching on her most popular form, other than her exalted form as the queen. I'm gonna be talking about her form called Dama da Noche, means the lady of the night, aka the lady in red. Now, Michael Jackson goes on to say, to escape the world, I've got to enjoy that simple dance. And it seemed that everything was on my side, blood on my side. She seemed sincere, like it was love and true romance. And now she's out to get me, but I just can't take it, just can't break it. Susie got your number, and Susie ain't your friend. Look who took you under with 7 inches in. Blood is on the dance floor, blood is on the knife. Susie got your number, and Susie says it's right. Man, Susie is a bad one, ain't she? Well, we know that Pambagira is often associated with the number 7. She's the lady of the 7 crossroads, and her number in general is the number 7. This is the reason why when I talk about Janet Jackson, when you see her being real fierce and really militaristic and all of that stuff, but still being extremely sexy and feminine and beautiful, that's that Pumbagira coming out. And as long as you don't get on Pumbagira bad side, I mean, everything can be cool. But if you try to cross her, well, that's when you end up with that 7-inch knife inside of you and you got blood all on the dance floor. Because just like with Baron Samedi, when the Baron come to collect, it ain't no, can I get a little bit more time? I don't want to go right now. I don't want to die. Please don't let me go. It ain't no type of begging that you're going to be able to do to the Baron when it's time for you to die. Just like they say that hell have no fury like a woman scorned. So when a woman is at that point where she wants to exact the ultimate revenge, which ends in death, it ain't really too much that you're going to be able to do to stop that wrath from making its way upon you. And I truly feel like in this song, Michael Jackson is explaining how if you try to go out there and take advantage of the wrong woman that got that Pumbagira spirit in her, and you try to cross her, you're gonna be the one that's gonna have a cross that's gonna be etched into your neck with that switchblade that Pumbagira carries around. Now, for the other meaning, Susie can also mean Lucy. Now, this is the thing, because I remember when I did my other video about the Michael Jackson Chronicles, people was telling me that Satan and Lucifer are two different things, and Lucifer comes to give you light and Satan is the devil and all of this stuff. This is the thing that I'm trying to get y'all to see. Light is just light. Energy is just energy. Lucifer is the bearer or the bringer of light. Light is power. So if you bring power, or if you bring light to a group of people who only knows how to use light in an evil, sadistic type of way, and the people that you're using it on don't understand that that light is actually something that can help them, but they use it in a way where it can hurt those people, this is the reason why I can say the things that I said in that last video. For example, let's just say that I was the inventor of the Mack truck, and I was the one who came up with the idea, and then I took my idea and I brought my light and my knowledge of how to make 18-wheelers to a company who can actually bring my dream to fruition. So now you got this Mack truck company, and you got two different families. You got this one family, they pretty much made their whole living doing truck driving, so they don't have nothing but good things to say about the Mack truck. And then you got this other family member who's still mourning the loss of their child because their child got ran over by a Mack truck. So they look at the Mack truck in a very evil type of way because that Mack truck took their child away from them. Now, does this make the maker of the Mack truck evil because someone took his truck and ran over a child with it, something that he himself had nothing to do with? That's the part that I really want y'all to understand, is that we all know that Lucifer is the light bringer. But if this Lucifer that we're talking about is bringing light to the soulless beings, and they're using the light that Lucifer is bringing for our demise, because too many of us don't understand that the light is for our good and not for our bad. So you are whatever you feel like you've been programmed and brainwashed to be. Then even though the energy of Lucifer may be innocent, the people who is wielding the light and made a whole Luciferian satanistic type of doctrine around the light and is now using that light for something evil, that's what I'm talking about. So when I say that Susie can also mean Lucy, what I'm saying is this is another way of Michael Jackson trying to tell us that when you get into this industry and everything seems so peachy cream, you got all the fame and all the money and all the fortune, and you think that all you got to do is just do a little simple dance and everything is just on your side, and then you find out that in this industry that you're in, that you took this oath to, is really a brotherhood. It's a blood in, blood out type of situation, and you done pissed so many people off in the industry for speaking your truth that now Lucy is out to get you. Lucy is out to kill, because if you really want to go there, we all in the conscious community synonymize Lucy with a woman anyway. So again, Lucy is Pumbagira as well. The song says, she got your number. How does it feel to know that this stranger is about to kill? She got your baby. It happened fast. If you could only erase the past. And then the rest of the song turns into a spell, because it's pretty much saying the same thing over and over and over and over. So like I said, remember when I was talking about You Can't Win on part 1? Well, this is You Can't Win part 2, when you try to get out the game. That's what this song is about. And there was a lot of subliminal messages going on in the song as well as in the video, where Michael Jackson was dancing in front of that triangle that the lady was doing with her legs. All of those things were super subliminal. And Michael Jackson, he was talking about Pombagira and him being Eshu, which is in Brazilian folklore, that version of Eshu, even though he's still considered as the messenger and all the things that he was in the Yoruba pantheon and the Santeria pantheon. But in Brazilian folklore, Eshu is kind of synonymized with the mythical devil because he has on all red, he got horns, and he also have a pitchfork. And Pombagira is known as the lady in red, aka the wife or the consort of the devil, aka Eshu. So Mike is like, look, since y'all want me to be the devil, I'm gonna be the devil and show y'all that even the devil himself has the heart of a child. Now, what better way to really drive this point home than to look at Michael Jackson's Thriller Part 2, which is his short film Ghost. This will be the last thing that I'm really gonna touch on, at least for this installment. So as you can see in this picture, Michael Jackson made a visit to the underworld way before Aaliyah did in Being Akasha. When you look at this picture of Michael Jackson, you're literally seeing Baron Samedi. But I'm gonna talk about Bad One Sam Z next time. But for right now, let's look at the release date of this Ghost short film. It came out in October 25th, 1996. You simplify those numbers down and you get the number 33 again. So y'all already know what's up. And it's crazy because Prince did something simpler to this, where he painted a side of his face to look like the Joker. So it just really shows you the different little small things that these artists kind of took from each other to make each other better. So in this film, it talks about a man, which we already know that Michael Jackson is pretty much talking about himself, with supernatural powers being forced out of a small town by the mayor. This stuff is just so blatant, like it's not even hidden in plain sight. This shit is super blatant, Michael. So the mayor of the Normal Valley leads a mob into the mansion of the maestro, who has been entertaining the local children with magic tricks and ghost stories. The children assure the parents that the maestro has done nothing wrong, but the mayor intends to banish him as a freak. So the maestro challenged the mayor to a scaring contest. The first to become scared must leave. Now this is funny because I actually seen a little bit of this so I can do the commentary on it, and this shit is just so subliminal and it's so metaphysical when you talk about the innocence. Because as you can see, when you're still connected to your innocence, nothing truly scares you. I mean, you really don't have that type of fear like that when you're connected to your innocence. When you see this short film, you see that these little kids wasn't scared to go to the underworld, aka this mansion, to see Mysterio perform these tricks and these ghost stories and all of this stuff. And the reason why is because, just like they say real recognize real, innocence recognizes innocence. So if I was a generally good-hearted person and I went out there and dressed up as a clown, all the kids would love me. A lot of the parents, since they've been indoctrinated with Killer Clowns and It the Clown and all of that, they may look at me as a freak or look at me as something strange, walking around in front of a whole bunch of grown folks in a clown costume, because they've been taken so much away from their innocence that they no longer see something as innocent as a man dressing up in a clown costume as something fun and just something funny. And people fear what they don't understand. And also people fear the unknown. It gets to the point where when you was a kid, you remember how you used to be so happy when you would get things like surprise birthday parties and stuff like that. And then when you get older, you start to dislike surprises more and more and more and more you go into your life and your adulthood. So that mayor and those grown-ups represented all of the soulless beings that was coming after Michael Jackson, be it the media, be it the parents of the children who was putting those kids up to saying those nasty things about him. It represented all of that who just wanted Michael dead. But it was funny that, I don't know if y'all caught this, but check out this scene that happens right before they step into the mansion in this movie about ghosts.
Go on. Go on anyway, come on.
Daddy, I'm scared.
Sure you are, that's a scary place.
No, I'm scared of them. What's gonna happen?
You just keep your eyes open. I want you to see how we treat outsiders around here, and I want you to remember it. Come on, what are we waiting for?
Alright, so y'all seen what happened in that scene, and it was so subliminal. And while I was looking at this, I started to really understand the true meaning of that song. And it was kind of like the meaning of a lot of the stuff that was in this album, where he was saying that y'all over here calling me weird, and y'all over here calling me a freak, and y'all over here calling me a pedophile and a child molester and all of this stuff. And if that's the case, why is it that the little children aren't scared of me, but y'all are? Why is it that I took off my face and I'm a whole skeleton and all of this stuff, and the children wasn't even screaming? Y'all were the ones that were screaming. Why is it that after y'all pretty much broke me down, the children came and put me back together again? And see, go back to that scene that I just played and remember what the dad told the son, because that's going to make a lot of sense when you go back and listen to a lot of those kids that grew up and then they started throwing dirt on Michael Jackson's name. Kids like Wade Robinson. And when Michael Jackson was subliminally, quote unquote, challenging them to a scare off with those skeletons and all of that stuff, what he was really saying was, let's really do a scare off. Some of y'all people out there in high places who's really trying to throw dirt on my name, all the Harvey Weinsteins of the world and all of the Jeffrey Epsteins of the world, why don't y'all come out and let's do a tit for tat? You pull out all the skeletons in your closet and I pull out all the skeletons in my closet, and let's see who has the scarier closet. And then we can talk about who needs to be excommunicated and banished away. So that's what that video about Ghost was really about. It was really like the Thriller Part 2, because see, in Thriller, he was the zombie, but in this, he's the zombie. You get it? So in closing, Michael Jackson will go on tour from September the 7th, 1996 until October 15th, 1997 for the iconic History Tour. And man, when I tell you, he performed his ass off. This tour included a total of 83 concerts. 8 plus 3 is 11. But you already know that this was a very iconic world tour from off the gate, with his start date simplifying to the number 5 and his end date simplifying to the number 33 again. Ooh, man, we just not gonna get rid of this 33, are we? I mean, well, this whole album had 33 all over it, so y'all know what's up. So this tour was attended by approximately 4.5 million fans, beating the previous Bad tour with 4.4 million. And for the first time, this is when Michael Jackson started to perform in the Arab world. Speaking of that, I remember the controversies that Michael Jackson went through with They Don't Really Care About Us. Y'all remember that? Y'all remember he had this part in the song when he was like, Jew me, sue me, everybody do me, or something like that? Well, he wasn't cleared to even perform that song until he changed the lyrics around, which he was super shocked that people just started to spread this wildfire that he was spreading these racial stereotypes and anti-Semitism and all of that, just because he was trying to make a protest song, just trying to shed light on the scrutiny that was going on the political front, on the social, economical front, and just in general in this country. But the History Tour went on to be his final and most well-respected world tours that Michael Jackson did. Following that would be another tour that we're going to talk about next time, which ended in another accident that would injure Michael the same way that that faded Pepsi commercial injured Michael. So man, as y'all can see, there is so much to cover about Michael Jackson's life, him being the Archangel Michael to him now being a final form of Eshu, the one that they tell you to never shoot the messenger, you know, that version of Eshu. But see, in 1998, Michael Jackson would face a whole nother slew of misfortunes, which is gonna last him all the way till 2005, when he was finally acquitted of all of those child molestation charges. But see, there's a lot that we gotta cover, from 98 to that faded moment in 2009 where he looked out into the crowd with his frail body and those shades on and that wig on, and he said, "This is it." So on the next and final installment of the Archangel Michael Chronicles, we're going to talk about Michael Jackson's financial troubles in his last days. We're going to talk about Michael Jackson's health conditions and many sicknesses that he had going on to his death. We're going to talk about the Invincible album that came out in 2001 and how Michael Jackson almost was able to make a great escape in 2005, and how one person changed his mind and told him to come back to these dreadful United States that he ran away from, where he would meet his demise in 2009. All of these questions and more will be answered on the next episode of the Archangel Michael Chronicles.
you've done.